Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. Today, Barry Eisler, a very successful author and a pioneer in new ways to publish. Yes, he brought along a book. It's called Detachment, the continuation of the John Rain thriller series, actually number 7 in the series. And the book is published by Thomas and Mercer, and more about them later, and thanks for coming by.
Thank you, Jim. Good to be here.
You know, we will talk a lot later about your publisher and the publishing process, but now I want to stay talking about John Rain and the Detachment. John Rain has been called by the San Francisco Chronicle the most, I love this, the most charismatic assassin since James Bond. How and what he does is how much of that is tied to your own real life experiences?
Well, I've never been an assassin, although I was a lawyer for about 10 years.
That's similar.
Yeah, a lot of people say so. But I did spend 3 years in a covert position in the CIA, and I'm fortunate in knowing a lot of people who have lived some interesting lives, whether in the military, law enforcement, or in crime. And I try to draw on everything I know, whether it's through my own experience, my own reading, or my personal contacts, to create the most realistic characters that I can. I think when people call Rain charismatic, it's certainly a compliment to Rain. I think what they're talking about is the experience of being inside the head of such a competent contract killer, and appreciating and getting to know the way he looks at the world, the way he deals with the world, the way he goes about his work, while protecting himself from the repercussions of his work. He's
given a not very enviable task in this book, or maybe I should say you give him that task, and that is taking a group of a total of 4 people, all of whom have the same kind of background as he does. They're all assassins for hire, if necessary. They're very rough, they're very tumble, and bringing them together as a team. People who would prefer to work alone.
Yeah.
That's nasty.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that, and every time I write one of these books, I try to put Rain on unfamiliar, emotional, or tactical, or both, terrain to see what happens. And Rain, by nature, is a loner. He's lived most of his life detached from the society around him. And now, and as the books have gone on, he's developed what a friend of mine has described as a clan. I think that's a nice word for it. He's got a partner now, former Marine sniper Docs, and love interest, a Mossad agent named Delilah. But that's about as far as it's ever gone. You could think of these people as partners or as a clan, but he hasn't had to actually manage a team. And in the Detachment, for the first time, he does. So this is a bit of a new experience for him, not an entirely comfortable one. And all this would be bad enough, but as you note, these are 3 other alpha male trained killers, each of whom prefers to work by himself. And Rain has got to keep them functioning as a team, not just to complete their objectives, but also to keep them from killing each other.
What a lovely club. What a lovely club.
If you can survive it.
Yeah. Now, in opposition to them, Rain and this group of characters and this team that he's putting together are pitted against some very formidable enemies. The most formidable yet, according to your press release, the unscrupulous and ruthless power brokers from political, military, media, and corporate factions known only as the oligarchy. And, you know, that sounds to me, when I read that, sounded so true to life that it scared the hell out of me. I mean, there is that kind of sense now, I think, in the country.
Sure.
That there's a high super class which is served by people from all the areas that you need to be served in order to create and maintain power.
Sure.
And then there's the rest of us.
Sure.
Doing their bidding.
That's right. To me, this is undeniable. And the reason I think a lot of people resist is just because the term oligarchy is something we traditionally reserve for other countries. We think of Russia as perhaps having an oligarchy, while in America we have an establishment. These are really the same things. It's just that establishment is a friendlier word. And there are lots of examples of this. I mean, for example, in America we have factions, while in other countries there are tribes. Other countries torture. In America we have enhanced interrogation techniques. We can go on and on about the kind of euphemisms that all countries and cultures use to protect themselves from having to squarely face the truth of what it is they do and what it is they are, while attributing those negative attributes to other countries to whom they would prefer to remain superior. But for anyone who's listening and thinking, oh my God, Eisler must be sitting there with a tinfoil hat. We don't have oligarchies in America. That's crazy. We're a democracy and all that sort of stuff. I would recommend a number of things, but most significantly, a 2009 a long Atlantic article called "The Quiet Coup" by Simon Johnson, who is the former chief economist of the International Monetary Fund and now a professor at MIT. And Johnson makes a very persuasive case that we do indeed have an oligarchical form of government and society in America. And other commentators have since been catching on to this. You've got Paul Krugman in the New York Times using the term, Nicholas Kristof also in the Times using a different word, banana republic, but meaning the same thing.
So it's there, it's out there, it's real, and in this very real context, you create yet another thriller for your favorite character, Mr. John Rain. So we have a book, The Detachment, which is full of colorful, violent characters, and I think we could meet some of them when we come back.
Good.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
The Detachment, the latest John Rain thriller. That's what we're talking about, and we're talking about it to the wonderful author Barry Eisler. It's a book published by Thomas and Mercer, which may be a bit of a mystery to you, but we'll be clearing that up soon. Entertainment Weekly said, I don't know if it was about this book or just in general, furious and creative. Rain's combination of quirks and proficiency is the stuff great characters are made of.
I like to think so.
Was that about this book or just in general?
Well, talking about Rain in general, I think the reference was maybe to Killing Rain or The Last Assassin, the fourth or fifth book in the series. I don't remember.
He's really, in many ways, a very down-to-earth character, even though he's in a rather different business.
Sure.
I mean, he worries about the things that other people, people in general worry about. And he's pushing this peanut uphill about making a bunch of individualists a team.
Yeah.
And so he turns out to be quite a sympathetic fellow. Not so sympathetic, it seems to me. Some of the other main characters, beginning with a fellow by the name of David Larison.
Daniel Larison.
Oh, Daniel, excuse me.
That's okay.
Who loves diamonds.
You just don't want to get him angry, that's all.
Yeah. And faked his own death.
Yes.
What a nice guy to have along.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be on Larison's. You wouldn't want to get on his bad side. He's got a hair temper, and he's a very dangerous guy. Former Special Forces, and as you said in the previous book, Inside Out, he faked his own death so that he could protect himself while using a number of torture tapes that the U.S. government had made to blackmail the U.S. government into turning over $100 million in uncut diamonds. And once again, just we were talking about the oligarchy a few minutes ago, those torture tapes are real for anyone who's curious. And again, for anyone who's curious, if you go to my website, barryeisler.com, you can find all the sources I use for all these points if you haven't already come across them in the news media. But those torture tapes were first revealed in December 2007. And if I'm remembering the date correctly. Now that I say that, it sounds a little longer ago. Maybe it was December 2008. Doesn't matter. The CIA announced that they had made but then destroyed. They were vague about the number. It sounded like a couple or a few tapes depicting the enhanced interrogation of certain terror suspects. 15 months later, March 2009, the CIA acknowledged that it wasn't just a couple tapes. It was actually 92, but don't worry, they had all been destroyed. And those tapes, their production, their circumstances formed the backbone of the plot of Inside Out.
Now, much of this material is in the book version of the story under a thing called sources.
Yeah, it's in the back of the books.
The back of the book, yeah.
In the back of the books themselves, and also on my website, I've gotten in the habit of linking to sources that I use, whether it's books or media reports, because a lot of the things I write about, people don't know and they think it must not be true. For example, many people, if they're not following this sort of thing, would think it's absurd and tinfoil conspiracy hat stuff to suggest that the president has a hit list, and on that list are some American citizens, and that the president claims he has the power to assassinate American citizens without any due process. Also, that the president claims to have the power to imprison indefinitely American citizens without charge, trial, or conviction. A lot of people think that this sounds outlandish, but these are uncontroversial. These are facts. President Obama claims these powers.
And the capability to jail a person without charge, that was just renewed under recent
under the National Defense Authorization Act. That's right. And in fact, we were talking about euphemisms a little while ago. Detain and detainee, those are two of my favorites. You never hear about the president imprisoning someone forever. We detain people. It sounds so much friendlier. Pretty soon we're going to start calling these people not detainees, not even prisoners, which is what they are, but guests. We'll call them guests. I mean, they are. They're guests of the government. We provide accommodations for them. Maybe we should start calling them guests.
One of the nicest things in the book, I think, is the friendship between the sniper, Docs, and John. It goes back several years.
Yeah, Docs was introduced in the third book, Rainstorm. And for anyone who's listening, I should say you don't have to read these books in order. Each one is designed to function and functions as a standalone. Docs was introduced in the third book, and he and Rain in many ways are like oil and water. Rain is focused and quiet and reserved, and Docs is loud and brash and larger than life. And
womanizer.
And a womanizer, for sure. Who likes to brag about his exploits.
He does.
The two of these guys on the surface are extremely different, and yet each in his own way is an extremely capable and dangerous operator. And over the course of several books, they've learned to trust each other and depend on each other in a way people find satisfying.
I want to get to the story of the book, if you don't mind.
Please.
It says here, the New York Times bestselling author Barry Eisler rocked the publishing world when he walked away from a $500,000 two-book deal with a major publishing house by the name of St. Martin's Press to pursue self-publishing. He then made headlines again when he announced at the 2011 Book Expo America meeting that he'd signed on with Amazon Publishing's Thomas and Mercer imprint for the next installment of his award-winning John Raines series, The Detachment. Released as an e-book on September the 15th, 2011, The Detachment immediately shot to the top 10 of the digital bestseller list. Trade paperback original, which I have in my hand now, was published on October the 18th, 2011. And in that lies one hell of a story. It's the story of an impatient author, and God knows we have a world full of impatient authors. But we also have a unique author in the sense who said, hell, I got to find a way to do something about this. And in a talk you gave, I think to a group of writers not so long ago, which I was listening to last night, you said that the first thing to understand about you, in a way, and I'm paraphrasing, is that you begin you begin to reason into what you're going to do by understanding what your goals are.
You have to
as a writer, and the first goal that you have as a writer. Hang on, folks. He wants to make a lot of money.
Sure.
Nothing wrong with that.
I don't know if I'd even say that's my first goal, but it's certainly one of my goals. And I realized that I could make more money self-publishing the book in the long term than I could going with a legacy publisher.
You know, it's great to have John Rain back in the Detachment. And when we return, we'll tell more of the story of how it all came to be.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Yes, I do. And I enjoyed reading The Detachment, a John Rain thriller by Barry Eisler. And I'm really enjoying the story of how it got to be published by Thomas and Mercer. Now, Thomas and Mercer is not self-publishing; it's Amazon.
That's right.
Part of their operation. And in order to get to them, eventually, you walked on the so-called 500K deal with St. Martin's Press.
Well,
which you were saying off air is not really a $500,000 deal.
It is. It's just that two things. One is I didn't walk away from the St. Martin's offer to get in the hope that I would have an offer from Amazon. I did it. I walked away from the St. Martin's offer because I intended to self-publish the book and wanted to self-publish it. And when there was a lot of media attention to my decision, and when Amazon heard about it, they approached me with what they said would be, in their mind, a cool way for me to get everything I wanted from self-publishing while still having all the advantages of legacy publishing. So why wouldn't I listen to that? I did, and they made a very interesting proposal. And I realized that I could better achieve the objectives that I had originally planned to achieve by self-publishing the book with Amazon as my publishing partner instead. So I went with Amazon. And as far as that $500,000 advance, not really being a $500,000 advance. It was a $500,000 advance, but what people have to understand is that the agent takes 15% of the $500,000, leaving $425,000, and then that $425,000 is paid out over the course of 3 years, 2 books. So from execution of the contract to the paperback publication of the second book, you're probably talking about a 3-year time frame. And so what I had to decide on a purely financial basis when I was comparing, okay, how much money can I make by publishing the book the traditional way versus how much can I make on my own. What I had to compare was a guaranteed $142,000 a year for 3 years versus what I could make if I controlled the rights to the book forever, particularly in digital where books never go out of print, and I decided I could make more money that second way. It wasn't just about the money, by the way. And I should add, for anyone who's really interested, if you write, if you're thinking about getting published, anyone who's really interested in getting into the details on this, if you go to my website, barryeisler.com, there's a link called For Writers. Just follow that link and you'll find a self-published book that I wrote with a friend of mine, the novelist J.A. Conrath. The book is called Be the Monkey, and you can download it for free from my website. And it contains a lot more detail than we can really get into in the time available here for how I made this decision and why and what's going on in the whole new world of publishing. But anyway, what I had hoped to do in self-publishing the book was to make more money, certainly, but also to maintain greater control over all the business aspects of publishing that traditional publishers are not particularly good at: packaging the book, timing the release of the book, pricing the book, that sort of thing. That was very important to me also. And my third objective was to bring the book out in digital immediately, not to slave the digital release to the timing of the paper release. Paper takes longer. It takes a lot longer just because you got to cut down trees and bind books and put them in boxes and ship them to points of distribution. No disgrace to paper, just by the nature of paper, though, it takes a lot longer. And legacy publishers prefer to hold back the release of the digital until the paper's ready. This doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't serve the interests of readers, and it doesn't serve the interests of authors. And I wanted the book to be ready in all formats as soon as it was ready to release in each format. And I can get that through self-publishing. As it happens, I was able to achieve all 3 of these objectives with Amazon as my partner, and to have Amazon's unparalleled direct-to-consumer marketing muscle behind the book also. So I think it was a good decision. The book hit number 1 in the Kindle store. Went to number 6 in the Wall Street Journal digital list and their combined digital and paper list. And it's been a pleasure, and even aside from just the results of this experiment, which have been extremely good, it's been a complete breath of fresh air to work with Amazon as a publisher. They're so smart, they're so innovative that it's been just great working with them.
There's a question that keeps bouncing around in my head as you go through the process, as you lived it and enjoyed it. And that is, it seems to me that writers still need some traditional elements, like an editor.
Of course.
And so that if you're out, quote, on your own,
right,
you have to find, hire, and pay that person.
Sure.
The same way in the area of publicity.
Yes.
You have to find, hire, and pay.
That's right. So self-publishing is not for everyone, and I wouldn't advise it for everyone, but you definitely want to know what are the advantages and disadvantages of all the systems that are available today, legacy publishing, self-publishing, and what I would call new publishing or hybrid publishing. That's the model being pioneered by Amazon. I sometimes say that self-publishing is kind of like being your own general contractor. That's not for everyone. If you want to redo a kitchen, some people want to hire a general contractor. If you have more of an entrepreneurial side and more of a do-it-yourself personality, then self-publishing might be for you. And again, I get into a lot more detail on these and related subjects on my website in that self-published free downloadable book called Be the Monkey.
Be the Monkey.
Also available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
And on AOL Today, reporting, Publishers Weekly reporting, and it talks about something called Digital Book World.
Yes.
A meeting that ended, I guess today or yesterday, and it ended with a panel of publishing types fretting about a strange relationship with authors. All the stuff that you were talking about today in terms of your own experience, and now they're starting to see it in, if you will, a wider, a more general way.
The establishment usually figures these things out after the peasantry.
The Detachment is a wonderful read, and it's written by a very important author. His name is Barry Eisler. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.